Hello and welcome to a special edition of the In the Money Players podcast. We've got a video version rocking as well as the audio, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, the video lives on our YouTube channel, In the Money Media. I'm going to do a little bit of a contest today. We're going to have people put in their winners of the Big Three Kentucky Derby prep races, and anybody goes runner, gives us a cold, we're going to give a special prize, maybe a t-shirt, maybe a book. We'll figure out something from the In the Money archives, but make sure to put your winners on the YouTube channel. If you're listening to the pod version, roll over to YouTube and pop it in there, because I'm not going to do it through comments or whatever. It's got to be in the comments on the YouTube channel, not things sent to the website, etc., etc. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel. Very happy to be back with you in the Brooklyn bunker once again, and joined for this very big Saturday of racing by a man who you know from his work at inthemoneypodcast.com and also making the morning line at Keeneland, world's most thankless job. He is Nick Tammaro. What's going on, Nick?
I'm doing great, my friend. Taking plenty of beatings necessarily on Twitter. Not with that. Keeneland hadn't even started yet, but no, it's fun time of year. It's always, this is one of my favorite weekends of the year with the wood and the Santa Anita Derby and the bluegrass. So great to be headed towards it.
It's fabulous. We're going to spend most of our time here talking about those big three prep races, and then we will do a quick run through Keeneland for a little bit of extra content for our friends over there. Why don't we start in New York with the Wood Memorial, Nick? Give me a sentence or two on how you see the overall complexion of this field, and then let me know who you think is going to win the damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the post position draw ended up mattering here, as it rarely does in a race like the Wood Memorial, with a field of 13 going post, where clear the air is supposed to come out. So it should end up being 12 or so. And that's, of course, because Hit Show drew the 13. And, it becomes a question of, we've seen this now twice in 2 weeks with prohibitive favorites. Hit Show is not going to be as big a favorite as Forte was in the Florida Derby, but he is expected to win. He did draw the far outside post, which isn't ideal. But, the more I tried to map out this race and get an understanding for how it was going to unfold, the less of a concern I had about him being out there, because in large part, there really are only two confirmed speed horses. There's a number of pressing types, but then there's really a number of pokey, late running types. And, interestingly enough, when you look at how the race is going to unfold, you probably assume that Dreamlike is going to show speed from the rail with the addition of blinkers. Basically, the five runners immediately to his outside have no speed. So he's going to get out. He's going to probably try and establish things. So too is Arctic Arrogance, who wants to be forward. And then I think Hit Show ends up slotting in somewhere around them, behind them. So I don't, barring a slow break or a total inability to stay within range, I don't envision it being a particularly big problem. One of the things that Forte ran into, and you and I talked about this a lot, recapping it, is that he really couldn't keep up early. Look at Hit Show's pace line last time out. I understand it was a downline race when you look at how quickly he went early and how quickly he was going at the finish. I use that word loosely, but I think it's a situation where he has enough tactical speed to overcome the bad draw. Look, Pete, he's clearly the horse to beat. I can envision myself playing a cold Brad Cox Exacta over Slip Mahoney, and then maybe trying to slot in Classic Catch or one of those late runners for the balance.
We got a lot of new people here. The downline concept, basically, in your pace line, which is, your pace figures for the race, getting slower as the race goes on, which sometimes can suggest distance limitations. It can mean a whole lot of things. Often it just means they went a little bit too hard early on. I'm with you on Hit Show. I mean, it's the keep it simple take here is to go with this horse. And I feel like the number, 2-1 or better, I think I'm still okay. He really looks like the fastest horse. I agree. I think it's kind of perfect with, you got the speed and you got the closers, and you should have a spot in between. And I think there's enough speed to hopefully set up a little bit more of a late run from Hit Show if he can get position established early. I do think there are interesting runners to try to put with him in USA style exotics. Classic Catch, who you mentioned, I think is pretty interesting. This is a horse who usually I come on and I say, well, yeah, the tape looks okay, but the figures aren't fast enough. But when I go through Classic Catch's race, I just find, reason after reason why the race is better than what the paper looks like. And that, to me, makes me think this is a horse that could move forward. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to beat Hit Show. I might have some combinations that way, but certainly one to come in behind. Another one I wanted to mention is Croupy as a possibility. This horse has the form that ties in closely with Slip Mahoney. I wanted to just sort of ignore the fairgrounds race in the sense that while he made no impact, the form of that is working out pretty well. And this is a horse that I just feel like has shown ability through trouble. Not a likely winner at all. Needs to do better, needs to break better, probably needs to have them go pretty fast. But this is a horse I could see being a very big price who might be able to get a piece of things. You give Croupy any hope in here?
I actually used him a little bit in the Risen Star last time out, and I was aghast when they went down the backstretch at how far back he was. So
Yeah,
I got a little concerned about that he just totally drops out. It's worth noting that his best race did come with Kendrick. His best race did also come with Lasix. So that's one of the concerns that I have. Maybe Kendrick can keep up with him a little bit more early to try and make sure he doesn't lose contact. I need a bigger price than he's going to be, unfortunately, to put him underneath. I need 20 plus to 1, and I think he's going to be a little short of that. I think morning line wise, I could see Classic Catch drifting up a little bit more than Croupy, depending on how hard they go on Hit Show. I mean, Hit Show is a horse who feels like he could end up going off less than 2 to 1, even with this bad draw.
Yeah, that would get me a little more interested in taking some shots at some of these long shots. How do you fully grade out the race from? I mean, I know you have license to change between now and post time, but if I were to ask you for A's and B's right now, where would you go?
Yeah, I picked it 13, 5, 7, 11. So, I mean, I would loan A the 13. I'd use the 5 probably more as a B and the 7, 11 more as C's. The one horse in this race he's a he wins, I lose candidate is Dreamlike. I don't like Dreamlike as the second choice. I'm not taking that horse as a maiden off a totally and completely excuse-free second place finish to a first-time starter from Bill Mott's barn.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, it wouldn't be shocking, I guess, based on the numbers.
Wouldn't be shocking, no.
But a horse that you're supposed to probably try to take a shot against here. Let's move on to the Bluegrass, my friend. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think that this race is actually relatively simple in the sense that I think if Verifying is able to get a good forward position, stalking the pace, I envision him being extremely tough to beat. I didn't pay enough attention first time around to the race that he ran in the Rebel. And in rewatching that replay a couple of times, he did get caught in kind of a tough spot around the quarter pole. The race was totally developing to the outside as the front runners passed the baton to the closers. And he was stuck right in that mess on the inside, getting held up in traffic. What did it cost him? Where would he have finished? Probably not better than where he did. But these are the kind of trips you want to bet back. These are the trips that I think the general public is probably ignoring because they just see a running line that looks sort of flat all the way around there. We charged him 2 starts back with maybe being a horse who moved up with Lasix. He might also be a horse that moves up when he's able to engage early. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I envision that Major Blue will clear and he'll set up shop right outside of him, because you want to talk about a race that's short on speed. I mean, outside of those 2, this is made up of 9 sustained off the pace type runners. I mean, maybe Mendelssohn's March has a little bit of tactical speed to stay close. Otherwise, this is an awfully slow bunch. And Tapit Trice is a favorite worth trying to beat. He's a horse that, might have a significant amount of talent as far as this crop goes, but that super grindy, needing to be outside type of running style, I just don't love in this scenario. Buried on the rail, a horse that's had some gait issues in a paceless race.
It's going to be a little bit tricky for him. I mean, I certainly will have him in the mix. When I did my sort of like star ratings for the race, star ratings, like basically like past resume, he certainly comes out on top as a horse who should be the favorite. But I'm with you. I think you can get cute in here. In terms of your A's and B's, what are you looking at for now?
I will loan A Verifying, and quite honestly, any multi-race bet that I have, if this horse loses, I'll lose. I don't have any alternatives in here that I want to bet that badly. I get it if you have I'll probably throw a little back up on Race Cane, and I undoubtedly missed the wedding on Race Cane. I did make some money on the race, but I'm not gonna, he's obviously not going to be 20 to 1. This horse might be better than people are giving him credit for. And I think that Joel Rosario is a decent enough fit. I just hope that Joel doesn't go on a mission to take him way out of it. I don't want to give up on him being a 2-turn horse either. So he might be one that, maybe is just coming into his own. He's run well locally. And Ben Colbrook's barn has generally been a little bit better at Keeneland than anywhere else. So I'll give him a little bit of a look for an upset.
You've identified the two horses that I have like big plus marks next to their figures, because they're both, to me, very hard to know what's exactly going on condition wise. I mean, you nailed it, certainly, with talking about the trip from verifying and the big figure to back. I can't fully shake the Lasix idea, so I really don't know how to rate him. I've got him in my mix, but I didn't put him on top. I ended up leaving Raise Cane out of my final reckoning of the race, but I understand those points. This horse is going to need a setup, but I am hoping you're going to get 10-1 on Sun Thunder. And I thought it was maybe a little bit interesting from a form perspective, having finished in between Angel of Empire and Two Fills the last time, or two back. And then the last day I thought was a very excusable trip, chasing a loose leader against the flow. This is a horse I'm going to mess around with, tying with logicals like Tapit Trice and verifying, and see if I can't maybe get away with something. Is your main concern about him race shape coming back this time? I mean, do you think he might be found against the flow yet again?
Yeah, I think he might be a little bit of a pace casualty. I don't think they're going to go fast enough for him. The other thing and I liked this horse a lot before I dug into the form a little bit more. One of the other problems I have is that move that it looks like he made in the Louisiana Derby was all inside. It was a totally inside dominated race. It was an inside dominated card. So I think it might be, it doesn't look as good as it probably could. This is splitting hairs a little bit and probably getting a little too esoteric, but I don't love Kenny McPeek's jockey assignments in this race. This is not a Florent kind of horse. Mendelssohn's March is a Florent kind of horse, but I think that Kenny really fancies Mendelssohn's March. And so that's why Brian Hernandez Jr., who's his main man, ends up there. I've never loved Florent with a deep closing type. It's really not his. You think about the horses that he's ridden over time that have been particularly good. They're pretty much all speed horses.
Yeah,
he is a foreign rider who's very good towards the front end.
We'll see what happens. I'm gonna stick there. I mean, if the price is less than 10-1, I might spin. But from here, I'm gonna list that one as my top pick. And we'll see what happens there in the bluegrass at Keeneland. Certainly some major Derby clues on offer, as there will be in the third Derby prep we're going to talk about, the Santa Anita Derby. We've got the Baffert, ex-Baffert, now Yachtine contingent. Spoiler alert, that's where I'm leaning in here, but very curious, Nick, to get your thoughts on this one, and also how key of a prep you think this will be. I mean, it feels like a race that could produce the Derby favorite, even if something interesting happens.
Yeah, I mean, Go Rocket Ride wires this field and gets a 105 buyer, and Flavian Pratt ends up riding him. I mean, could he be favored? He could make it damn close. He could be the second choice, no doubt about it. I don't know who else could win this race in a flashy kind of manner that might supplant Forte as the favorite. However, you have 5 horses in this race that are basically all drawn right next to each other, save Go Rocket Ride being one stall farther in. That all look like horses that could jump up. And I included Mandarin Hero in that because we really just don't know what he is. We're going to find out. We all fear, obviously, how good this Japanese form has been on a global stage. I picked Skinner. My thought on the San Felipe was that was a card where it benefited you to be inside. We saw a number of wire-to-wire winners that were close to the rail. The 1-3 finishers in the Santa Anita handicap spent a lot of time on the inside. Proxy's a horse I'm actually looking forward to betting back out of his second place finish in there. And so I want to upgrade the performance of Skinner, who was wide the entire way. He's going to be wide again. So hopefully this is not a good inside situation. He's an off the pace type. He's got Victor Espinoza. That generally is going to lead to a wider trip. He feels like a horse that might just have moved forward significantly as a 3-year-old. And give me, John Sheriff's in this kind of scenario with a horse that's working his way into form, especially one who he really did have high aspirations for. This is a horse that he ran in a grade 1 as a maiden last year twice. So I landed there. I have no significant enough knocks on any of those other 4 horses that I mentioned, including Go Rocket Ride, Practical Move, National Treasure, and Mandarin Hero. I'm just going to settle on Skinner because I think his price is good enough. But, if you have a big lean on National Treasure, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to talk you off.
Yeah, that's actually where I landed. So you'd be lone A here, Skinner, and then use those other four as backups.
No, I would use Go Rocket Ride and Mandarin Hero as A's as well.
Okay.
Mandarin Hero mainly because of the fear. Go Rocket Ride because I do think that the intention here is going to be pretty clear. I think they're just going to go, and I really hope that's what they do, because you take a lot of kind of mucky muck out of the situation when you just go. So I'm looking for him to try and make all.
I could see it. So the little speed work I did had Mandarin Hero being more like a low mid 80s horse. I ended up sort of rating him as a horse to run an 85, which obviously wouldn't get the job done. Now, that's a guess. And the Japanese
Yeah.
runners internationally have stuffed me in a locker, kicked sand in my face, whatever you want to say, many times. I do think this is a spot where the narrative might push that number down enough that I'm willing to make the fade. I ended up with National Treasure based on the back class, based on the fact that while the seasonal debut was not impressive, that was not a very good trip. Obviously, there was an issue that led them to skip the San Felipe, but it looks to me, looking at these workouts, like that stuff is behind him, and that this is a horse who's just supposed to improve in his second start at 3. And based on the numbers he was running at 2, that just makes him the top one in here for me. And then the others, they're just all super logical. I mean, Go Rocket Ride, huge potential improver. Practical Move, I'm assuming, will go the favorite in here. This horse deserves to be the favorite. Could, if he just runs to his paper and moves up second off the layoff, he could easily win. I just don't think there'll be any juice in that price. And then Skinner, on form, I suppose has something to find with the Actine runners, but you can pump in lots of blue sky with Sheriffs and what we've seen from that horse's talent. So I was going to try to play it basically the 6 with the 3-5-7. Sounds like you'll be a bit spreadier, 7-3-8 with 5-6.
Yeah, that's exactly how I'm going to go. The question I had about National Treasure, and I'll ask you since you like him a little bit. He looked to me going down the backstretch during the Breeders' Cup Juvenile like a horse that might have a little bit of an issue passing other horses. He might want to dictate terms to everybody. I wonder if that's something that they might not include in the strategy and in the approach here. They took Reincarnate to the lead last week in the Arkansas Derby. I wonder, this is a situation where you've got a few horses in this race that they might break out of the gate and their jockeys might look left or right and see what's going on and then change what they were planning to do. Obviously, you have a horse like Low Expectations on the outside that could show speed. I don't know if they're going to let him clear the field, but you could see if Flavian is not committing to the front end on Go Rocket Ride, and maybe National Treasure goes on with it and just tries to go get the lead. And obviously in that scenario, he would become significantly more dangerous.
I think it's either that or it's the John Velasquez, too
First
wide,
over,
sort of perfect,
ready to pounce. Yeah.
So I love the trip he's going to get, but I wouldn't. But you know what? If nobody wants to go, I won't be complaining if they just send there.
We're not going to hear about your tough trip if he's on the front end.
No, I will not be whining. I'll be saying I got beat on the square if I don't get the job done from there. Let's very quickly roll through some of the Keeneland action. There's this all stakes pick 5. I think it starts with race number 5. If my calculations are correct, I got to get to the right over here. How do you want to kick this thing off?
This is probably one of the tougher stakes races on this program, depending on how you feel about Nakatomi, right? I mean, Nakatomi is a perfect 3 for 3 at Keeneland. He looks like he might be a little bit better at Keeneland than he is anywhere else. It comes in off a good effort, all things considered, in the Tom Fool, finishing 3rd behind Little Vic, who's probably going to be the second, maybe 3rd choice in the Carter on Saturday afternoon. So plenty of reason to believe that Nakatomi is a horse that you'd want to give serious consideration. I would undoubtedly use him. I did think there were a couple of horses that could be more forwardly placed that might be a little interesting. I'm hoping that Raylu rides Run Classic aggressively. There's just not a whole lot of speed in here. And this is a horse that really exploded in his last start at Keeneland, his lone try here, winning by 8 lengths. I actually thought Brett Calhoun might try this horse in the Cigar Mile after he ran the way he did. He ended up going a more conservative route, and I think it kind of bit him on the backside doing that. But he's a horse who comes in good form. I think going long, they may have realized, okay, that was fun, but we're not doing it anymore. Obviously, you have the LASIK situation to be concerned about, but I don't think you can burden yourself with that too much. And I do think in scenarios like this, where a horse is going to potentially have a pace edge, you want to give him some pretty serious consideration. So I'd start with those two and feel pretty good about being able to get through.
That's exactly how I had it to kick things off. I put Run Classic on top because I think should be able to take advantage of that pace scenario. But Nakatomi's recent body of work makes him very hard to leave out. If I had to choose between the two, I'd be pressing more Run Classic, but I would love to have some backup lines at least going with Nakatomi. That brings us to the Appalachian for these 3-year-old fillies going a mile on the turf. I might be master of the obvious here, but I thought Pleasant Passage, the 7-runner, just looks super strong. Looking at the figures she was running last year and that big run in the juvenile fillies turf, just pumping in some figure improvement for age, might be very difficult to down, with Cairo Consort being the obvious alternative, closing into the slow pace, last time out winning despite a tricky trip, 2 races back. Yeah, I'm master of the obvious to start this pick 5 because I'm first choice, second choice here. I'm pretty sure. What do you like in the Appalachian?
Yeah, and then we're going to get to a race where we're probably going to single a 2 to 5 shot. So it's a good start to it. No, a situation like this, where, as you alluded to, Pleasant Passage ran 2-year-old figures that really would make her kind of not a standout, but would make her pretty tough to beat if she's able to duplicate them here. I think you want to give horses in that scenario plenty of consideration. Maybe the lone upset the apple cart horses be your best. Horacio de Paz off a layoff. This could easily end up being a filly that needs a race, but I do think that there's going to be a little value to be had here on a horse that ran races that were good enough last year. I hope we get the version of Be Your Best we saw at Saratoga a couple of times again. I wonder if maybe that was the best of what we're ever going to find. I like Saez on because I think he's going to put her forward. There's not a lot of speed in here, and her only opportunity to win this race is to be forwardly placed and get the jump on some of the deeper closers. So 6 and 7 is ace for me. I'll back up with the 2 and 3.
All right, 6 and 7 with the 2 and 3. One thing about the Paz, I mean, when they're that good with first-time starters, they're often very good bringing them back from layoffs. So maybe
Usually,
that
yeah.
mitigates some of that needing a race concern, especially, a meet. This is such a meet where, you wouldn't typically prep here, right? You'd
Correct.
probably try to come fully formed. We'll see.
It's just a division where you could be prepping in April. But yeah, I mean, you're not usually prepping at Keeneland.
Especially for a guy like that, I think that, I correlate those two things, the layoffs and the first-time starters. The stats back it up to some degree. There are some exceptions for sure. Race number 7, the Grade 1 Madison. Fillies and mares 4 and up, 7 furlongs on the dirt. Can they beat Goodnight Olive in here, Nick? You made 2 to 5 on the morning line, and I'd rather bet that than lay it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems unlikely. One of the big surprises for me of a Breeders' Cup weekend was not only how bet Goodnight Olive was, but how easily she won. And she was bet from, it was like all I heard from at the racetrack on Friday was how Goodnight Olive was a cinch, and all you heard on Saturday was how Goodnight Olive was a cinch. And I loved that. Loved Obligatory, and I thought, no, Obligatory can win. She can win, and then they made her 9 to 5, and I mean, she just cruised. So if she runs that race, she's going to be extremely hard to beat. The only scenario I could envision with her getting beaten is Society getting loose and somehow just Goodnight Olive can't get her. But that seems very unlikely. Goodnight Olive is very handy. She can be forward. She's going to be tough.
And Ugiri is supposed to give Society a hard time on the front
She
end,
should.
right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, she should.
All about Goodnight Olive for me. It'd be interesting to see what Society does just in terms of the division going forward. Race number 8, we've got the Grade 2 Shakertown, 5.5 turf sprinting. Breeders' Cup champion Caravel makes her return to the races in this spot. I had the inclination to try to get Arrest Me Red in the winner's circle from that far outside draw. I just think he might be able to pull a really nice trip from out there, being able to let the speed go, settling in, stalking and pouncing as he's done so effectively in the past. I mean, 9-2 would be a square price to me. I do think the crowd is going to go nuts for Caravella, as they should. I mean, she's very accomplished. She's very cool coming here from the Breeders' Cup win. But I just, I'm guessing your guess of 8 to 5 on the morning line is right on. And that's probably just a little too skinny for me, given the competition that she faces in this spot. I wouldn't blame anybody for taking, but I just thought there might be better value elsewhere. I was going to land on Arrest Me Red. Who do you like in the Shakertown?
Yeah, nobody's told me how off the line is, so I'm assuming that 8 to 5 is about right. It's funny. She is a horse that and this is obviously an exercise you'd have to be careful with, but I mean, you draw a line through that Breeders' Cup. She doesn't look any better than 5 or 6 horses in this field,
Correct.
and so it becomes a question of, do you want to take a late autumn turf course where she was able to get loose when the speed got left? And do you want to take that as a race that's the standard? I just think you don't. And in a sequence where it looks so formful otherwise, this is the opportunity where you have to try some alternatives. So I'm going to, I could see myself cursing afterwards that I even tried, but I'm going to try. I'm going to use Artemis City Limits, who it gets IRAD, and I'm not going to be surprised if IRAD slams on the gas coming out of the gate. Artemis City Limits is a pretty quick horse. And if you're able to beat Caravel to the punch, the other thing is that Tyler's not going to be committed to the lead. I mean, he took the lead because they broke out of the gate last time out. He looked over and saw Golden Pal got left, and I think was like, holy hell, I can get the lead.
Yeah.
She's not a horse that's necessarily going to be on the lead. I'm going to use Bad Beat Brian a little bit. I think he can run well synthetic to turf. He's got some turf races at Keeneland that make him competitive. I'll use Oceanic off the layoff, and I'll use Arrest Me Red as well. I've been an Arrest Me Red fan for quite a while. I actually bet him in the Breeders' Cup last year off that wide trip at Kentucky Downs. I realized at about the quarter pole that he was done, and I was not thrilled. And I'm still a little annoyed about how much I would have cashed for if Emirati Anna had won that race,
Oh
because
my
I
God.
think I would have had a $5 pick four that ended with Elite Power. It would have been. I'd have to. I'm going to torture myself now when we're done and go back and look through it. But yeah, it would have been really good.
Oh, that's funny. 3, 10, 12. Was that the recap of the numbers? Did I have
3, 9, 10, 12. And I'm just going to try and beat her. I'm going to use those four. And if she wins, then I lose.
12-3 for me. I'll get skinny here and see if we can make the magic happen. Certainly not rooting against Caravel from our friends at Qatar Racing. Boom text will be sent if she gets the job done. But from a financial point of view, I think that's the right way to rock and roll. We already talked about race number 9. Go back earlier in the show if you want to hear us. If you want to hear us talk about that, and let's move on to the next race in the at Keeneland on this Saturday card, which we might as well just, quick thought here, and we'll wrap it, Nick. But, for those playing the later part of the card, we got this 3-year-old allowance that goes as race number 10. What did you think?
I mean, how good is Squire Creek, right? That's the question here. And how much heat can he take early and would be able to withstand it? It seems like Brad Cox is just cranking out these talented horses that win on debut left and right. So, I mean, he looks awfully good. I made him a relatively short price on the morning line based on the 89 fig and a big sheet number. So I'm assuming he's going to run well. Blue Light is a horse that took money from start to finish on debut. That was the nightcap on NHC Saturday. And people that were looking to try and find a bomb late in the day were not greeted favorably by Blue Light. Gilcrease, I think, is the dangerous horse, second off a layoff. Having run well on debut last year for Al Stall, he came back with a decent enough effort behind a runaway winner. I mean, the rest of this field from 5 out looks like they're totally overmatched. So I think in some capacity you're using the 1, 2, and 4. But if you're really looking to hone in on the 1, I'm not blaming you.
Yeah, I just had a note that the 1 looked too tough to beat. I didn't do as much work on this race as many of the others. I was curious to hear what you said. Hearing that, I'll probably back up with the 2 and the 4 and play the 1 in this spot. One more race to talk about to close out Keeneland on Saturday. We got these 3-year-old maidens going 1.125 miles on the turf. Who gets the money?
I mean, this is the mother of all 2-horse races, right? It's between Mondigo and Operation Torch, the 1 and 3. It's going to take a huge step forward from anybody else. These two both ran very well on debut. I didn't really know where to go in terms of making the favorite, and I chose Operation Torch mainly because he got a better buyer figure, but Mondigo got basically ran a better race from a pace perspective, because that was a particularly strong pace before getting run down by Baby Billy. So, I would say you use those two, and as fun as this card is, and as great as much as I look forward to Keeneland, the back half of it looks like it could be very formful. So I look forward to all of the chorus of boos on Twitter afterwards about how chalky it was.
We'll see. Sometimes it only takes 1 to get the job done. Yeah, I'll just follow you in lockstep to close things out at Keeneland. Hopefully, it might be a situation to try to have this thing a number of times.
That's what you have to do. Yeah, you got to find your combination and hit the repeat button numerous times. And I think the best strategy is to do what I did and try and beat Caravel. She is the most beatable favorite. If you have an opinion in the Appalachian, take advantage of that, because Pleasant Passage feels like a horse that you might not want to really get too involved with, while recognizing she is the horse to beat.
Loads more content to come. If you're watching this on YouTube, hop over. We'll actually have more YouTube stuff later. We've got the Santa Anita show is going to go up on YouTube as well. But then we're going to have New York content. Stephen Christ joining us. That's going to be podcast only. Folks will want to check that out. And we will see you when we see you, folks. Thank you so much, Nick.
You bet, my friend. Good luck.